Hi, welcome to the 2011 Online Teaching Conference. Today we'll be talking about academic dishonesty and how to promote a culture of integrity and engagement in online courses. I thought I'd begin with a picture of Candy and myself and explain to you how we came together to create this presentation. Candy and I met while we were in graduate school getting our degree in online teaching and learning at CSU East Bay. Today I will be the presenter. My name is Nancy Ortner, and I am a high school teacher at Visions in Education Charter High School. Visions in Education is a blended learning, which means it's a hybrid of both online and face-to-face meetings. So let's start with some numbers, and some very important numbers. 75% and 95%. These numbers represent how many students in a recent poll admitted to some form of cheating. And if you notice, the blue represents college and the red represents high school. 3/4, 1/2, 1/2. 3/4 of college students surveyed believe that cheating is not justified under any circumstances. 1/2 of high school students surveyed said they don't think copying questions and answers from a test is even considered cheating. And 1/2 of the students surveyed believe that the faculty of their university don't try to catch cheaters. In addition, surprisingly, 59% of high school students agreed that successful people do whatever they have to do to win, even if others consider it cheating. %, 33%. 88% of the faculty observed some form of serious cheating, yet 33% never did anything about it. And here's a chart that shows you the 88%, 62% of the 2,500 surveyed believe that academic dishonesty is just a minor problem. 56% reported it, 33% ignored it, and it's interesting, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, that almost 43% of these faculty members had some kind of honor code at their school. %, 26%. Is faculty concerned? 37% said that academic honesty was their number one concern regarding online teaching, and 26% believe students will engage in academic dishonesty in online courses. So what that tells us is that faculty is already concerned. 10 million, 22 million. This represents the continued online growth from currently 12 million college students to a projection of 22 million in the 2014-15 school year, and from 2 million high school students to 10 million forecasted. So we have to be prepared for a huge growth. Also, just out of curiosity, The money that represents in product and services goes from $18 billion to $24 billion forecasted. So I have a question for you. What do you think? 20% of the students started cheating in what grade? And the answers are 4th grade, 11th grade, 9th grade, or 1st grade. If you answered 1st grade, you were right. In fact, with cheating starting as early as 1st grade, we know that it spikes in transitional years, peaks in high school, and then is taken with those students to college. So it starts early and it continues through the entire career. So we know that cheating happens. But we know that cheating does not occur more frequently in online courses. And this is a good example. This picture, every time you see a red circle or an arrow, is pointing out how much cheating is going on in this classroom. Students have become very savvy using their text messaging in phones, writing on their arms, on their legs. So we know that cheating is something that occurs all the time. Another thing that teachers think is that if we're just good enough or smart enough, we can stop cheating. But in fact, according to Donald McCabe, who has done some extensive research on academic dishonesty, we know that 15 to 20% of students will cheat no matter what we do. What we can do is teach academic integrity. So for today's session, we will learn how to promote a culture of integrity in online courses and how to use teaching tools to reduce academic dishonesty, promote collaborative learning and engagement, and to enhance teaching and learning. The challenge that we're faced with today is how can an instructor promote academic integrity in an online course? So to begin with, let's define academic dishonesty. Academic dishonesty can be plagiarism, cheating, deception, fabrication, identity fraud, sabotage, bribery, general misconduct, or unauthorized collaboration. So another question for you. What is the fastest growing method of cheating? And while you're thinking about that, I'll put the definition back on here, and so you can choose from any one of those. What is the fastest growing method of cheating? Unpermitted collaboration is the fastest growing method of cheating. But why? Because research finds that when students collaborate with one another, it's a good thing. They engage in more discussion, problem solving, and critical thinking. They learn the subject matter more completely and develop higher levels of interest in the subject matter. They retain information longer than when they're working individually, and they're very comfortable driving their own educational destiny. But the problem is sharing and originality are colliding. We're in a digital culture that promotes sharing, openness, and reuse, but it's colliding with the ability to develop, organize, and express original thoughts. For many students who have grown up downloading music, sharing music, tweeting, and downloading software, the principle of originality in their research and writing seems way outdated. Students today think that information is just hanging out there in cyberspace. So let's look at a recent study that was done by Turnitin, which is a program where instructors and students can see how much of the information in their paper was actually plagiarized or taken from another source. And they found that 1/3 of all of the content came from social networks, content sharing, or question and answer sites where others contribute the content and share the content. 1/4 of it is from legitimate educational websites. 15% of content matches came from sites that promote and benefit from academic dishonesty. And this is where you would find the paper mills and the cheat sites. And so Wikipedia is mentioned as the most popular site for student-matched content. The others listed in order are Answers at yahoo.com, Answers.com, Slideshare.net, OPapers, and so on, so that you can see that students are very good at finding sites to get information from. The way to stop it, according to this study, is just really to know and to find tools to address the problems. It is important for educators to draw a clear line between what can be reproduced and what must be created. If not, there is risk that a generation of students will not develop the critical thinking and communication skills necessary for a productive life. So let's look at some traditional frameworks. We have the values approach, which creates an environment in which students do not want to cheat. We have the prevention approach, which creates barriers to cheating. And we have the policing approach, where this is where you would use a lot of plagiarism detection websites. The policing approach actively seeks to catch and punish. We prefer the values and prevention framework. While academic dishonesty may not be the gravest moral problem facing our students, it is certainly the most out there. It's happening all the time. And when students cheat over and over and over, it becomes to their moral character a death by 1,000 tiny cuts. Students who get good grades after cheating soon feel that they're getting ahead, but actually they're falling behind. Their scores misrepresent what they know. And it's a form of self-deception because getting a lot of A's, no matter how you got them, assumes that that person is smart. So the student begins to feel smart, they're being treated as being smart by their peers and the teacher. And that was based on research by the Harvard Business School and Duke University. So we're going to talk about the values and prevention framework. And if you noticed, we left one out of there, but it'll make sense. So we turn to Benjamin Franklin for his famous quote on prevention: "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." And Mark Twain, who said, "It is better to deserve honors and not have them than to have them and not deserve them." And we know through a recent 3-year study that surveyed over 3,600 students from 6 diverse high schools that students want their schools to do more to promote and enforce academic integrity. So let's look at the values prevention framework. That involves building positive relationships, building communities of integrity, developing honor codes, educating students about academic integrity, using rubrics, and demonstrating intolerance for academic dishonesty. So we will look at each one of these components and include some toolbox tips to take away with you, and ones that we have used personally and found very helpful. So the first component is building relationships, and that's key, not only between students and teachers, but also student-to-student relationships. Students need to perceive that they have a positive relationship with their instructor. And when they do, they're more likely to learn and less likely to cheat. Students consistently identify the behavior of their peers as one of the most important situational factors influencing their level of academic honesty. So here are some suggestions for building relationships in an online course. Number 1, provide students with a picture of you. You'll notice at the beginning of this presentation that I showed you a picture of Candy and myself, because it's important that in an area where students never meet each other and never meet the teacher, that they have a picture for a reference. It's a good way to welcome them to your class. Also, write them a welcome letter, email a personal note, or have a welcome page on your course or personal website. If your course has a discussion board, create areas where they can ask you questions. Another suggestion is to call students to introduce yourself at the beginning of a course. And also, as you know, it's always important to provide an area either on the website or on your course site, or phone numbers, so that students who want to talk to you in private have a place where they can do that. This is an example of my website, and I not only put general announcements on there, but having students in grades 9 through 12, you have to have a variety of information on there. But
Recording started.
Cheating is reduced This is an example of my website, and we had a little glitch, so I wanted to make sure that I covered everything on there. Using a website is a great example to build relationships with your students. The second component of our framework is building communities of integrity. And I've included this quote because I think it's very important. Student behavior is affected by the communities that we build. And we know that cheating is reduced by 1/3 to 1/2 in schools that have created a culture of academic integrity. There are 3 main areas that are influential in building communities, and those areas are course design, communication, and collaboration. So I'd like to show you some examples for your toolbox. This is an example of my blog that I used with students when we were reading the novel A Separate Piece. And so through my blog, students created their own blogs, and then I connected them all to my blog so that they could read the assignment and some of my thoughts, and then they had to finish the assignment on their own blog and then respond to 2 other classmates' blogs. So it was a great way to get everybody involved. Another example, and we're all familiar with it since we're using it right now, is Illuminate. And I have a group of students that we meet, and on a regular basis, our group talks about the novel that we're reading. The third component of the framework is honor codes. And there's been many surveys and studies, but they all come up with there's less cheating when there's an honor code. So I wanted to give you some examples of honor codes that we like. And this one is from the University of Maryland, and it reads, "I pledge on my honor that I have not given or received any unauthorized assistance on this assignment or examination." And what's important about this honor code is that the student has to write this on the test or the assignment if it is worth 20% or more of the grade. So every time the student is doing a test or turning in an assignment, they're reminded constantly over and over and over about the honor code. This is an example of a high school honor code, and it's very similar. On my honor, I have neither given nor received unauthorized aid on this assignment. And again, the way that this is effective is that it has to be included on every major assignment, every major paper that's turned in. And another thing that I think is a really good idea is that it has to be handwritten. It can't just be typed in at the end of a paper. So those are some examples of honor codes. And if you do a search, internet search, you can come up with a lot of different examples so that you can either structure one for your school or just for your class. The fourth component of our framework is educating students about academic integrity. And this is really interesting. When asked why students cheat, the answers given were laziness, pressure to do well. The teacher doesn't care, so why should I? Famous people cheat, and we see that all the time in the media. Didn't have enough time. Everyone's doing it, so I want to level the playing field. But the number one response over and over again was they didn't realize that they were doing it. Many students don't even believe that they're cheating because they don't understand plagiarism, they don't understand copyright, or if they do get caught, they rationalize their actions. When questioned, students did not believe using the internet for resources or looking at test banks found online was cheating. They just thought that they were being really savvy about using the available online resources. But again, studies show us that students who've completed a web tutorial were shown to plagiarize less. And one of the reasons why is because it educated students. It explained to them what is cheating, what is plagiarism, and why it's wrong, rather than the catch and punish framework. So I wanted to give you some examples of some online tutorials. And the Virtual Academic Integrity Lab is a great place to go. And again, it's the University of Maryland. This has a separate place for students and for faculty and administrators to log on. So then when they're finished, they actually can have a certificate that says, yes, they've passed the quiz and they have finished the tutorial, and they can email it to their teacher, which is a great idea because then you both know that they've received the tutorial information and no longer have the excuse that they didn't know it was wrong. Another tutorial that we like is from the University of Southern Mississippi. And the links I've provided, the links for you. This one begins with a pre-test. And I actually went on and did the pre-test myself and then had it emailed to me. So students can get on, take the pre-test, and then email their scores to their teachers. So another really good idea for educating students about academic dishonesty and honesty. The fifth component is using rubrics. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with rubrics, but and I know I speak for a lot of you when I say I love rubrics. Rubrics communicate the criteria. And studies again show us that students who understand the criteria, how they will be evaluated, are less likely to cheat. Students understand what's expected of them, what they need to accomplish, which is an additional support for student learning, and they also make students feel that they're being graded in a more fair and consistent manner. An example of a place where you can find many, many different already created rubrics or create your own is called Rubistar. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but it's a great tool. The last component is demonstrating intolerance for academic dishonesty. All of the components we've talked about previously won't work unless you, the teacher, demonstrates intolerance. And the next slide really spells it out. Whoa. There has to be consequences for academic dishonesty. Cheating is more likely to occur when students think they're not going to get caught. It's also more likely to occur when the consequences are low, when it's no big deal. So again, there must be consequences. The longer students spend in an environment that supports or condones or looks the other way, the more prone they will be to develop long-term habits of cheating. And those cheating habits that begin early on in elementary school, continue and peak in high school, and then travel with the student to college will continue in the workplace. So this is where we get into the framework that talked about the catch and punish part. But we've included it in our framework as the last component that talks about how teachers demonstrate intolerance and set the consequences. So here are some examples. Plagiarism detectors, we talked about that earlier. Academic honesty policy statements, which should be in your course syllabus. They should be on your website, everywhere. They should be everywhere, your policy statements for academic honesty. Also, along with your policy statement, what are the consequences? They must be clear and they must be defined so that there's no guesswork, there's no wiggle room. If you cheat, this is what will happen. Routine password changes, if that's possible at your school. Also, you require students to read and digitally accept the policy, and you can have it, have them have to re-accept the policy within whatever time periods you want. So if you think once a month, every so often, you want them to read and again accept your academic honesty policy, that's a good idea. Also, more for the higher education, develop rules against identity fraud, and also write a letter to your students explaining your personal views on integrity, how it is far beyond the classroom, their integrity, their personal integrity. So really, to sum it all up, it's up to you. You're the one who demonstrates the intolerance. You're the one who sets the pace. So let's revisit our original challenge, which was how can an instructor promote academic integrity in an online course? And we've talked about building positive relationships, building communities of integrity, developing honor codes, educating students on academic integrity, using rubrics, and demonstrating intolerance for academic dishonesty. Because academic integrity is a vital component when we're preparing our students to be 21st century learners and to prepare them to think critically, to build collaborative relationships, to problem solve, and communicate in a diverse global community. Their integrity, academic integrity and personal integrity, is a vital component. So I would like to thank you for participating in my presentation today. And if you would